I want to tell you a story, and my stories I build on. I build on them because they build relationships. And there are sad stories and happy stories. I bet if I polled anybody in this audience, we all have stories, correct? All kinds of stories to share of happiness and challenge and adventure. But my stories are of students who are in crisis. I work with a group of students in a special ed program, self-contained, that have been identified as emotionally disturbed. However, I like to call them extra delightful because they really do delight my world. I learned a long time ago our students have stories that we must listen to. And I don't listen to reply, I listen to hear. Because in order for me to build a great relationship and a boundary for my students to learn, I must take the time to hear their stories. And as in my field that I work with, you can imagine the stories that I have. Let me go back 40 years, my first year, my first semester, my first teaching assignment. It's not a typical school. We were in Children's Hospital, brand new program for children, terminally ill, chronically ill, severely abused. We're in there short term, long term, and I experienced many of my students dying. First year teacher. So I'm getting my first classroom ready, and it's about the second 9 weeks. And I'm working away, getting my lessons ready, and I hear a noise at my door, and I turn around and I look, and there's a student there already. And I'm going, Kaylin, what in the world are you doing here? You're 30 minutes early. Now, none of our students were supposed to go anywhere by themselves. They had to have nurses. And I said, you're a little early. And he said, well, teacher, I want to come to learn. I want to be here now. But where's your nurse? Well, she's in my room, getting me ready. I'm going, but you're here and she's there. I know, but I wanted to come to school. And I said, but how did you get here? And he said, well, I rode, teacher. I rode down the hall. Now, ladies and gentlemen, teacher friends, this is one of my first students. He did not have arms. He did not have legs. He is a product of drugs. He rolled down the hall to be to school. We went about our day. Wasn't too far along. His nurse comes down the hallway with his wheelchair. We get him in his specially adapted wheelchair, ready for school, and we go about our day. We had built those connections, told him how wonderful he is despite his background that he was brought up in. Now let's come forward to now, where I'm teaching this day and age, and I've learned that children are basically the same. Little sponges, eager to learn, want somebody to teach them, but they come with us with so many other problems. Dysfunctional homes, dysfunctional society, health issues, on and on and on. So it is more imperative, friends, that we must listen to our children's stories. So I have a brand new student this year with me, wonderful young man. He's just a jewel, but his history wasn't quite so jewel when he came to me. He had a hard time getting into the program in his building. He just couldn't get fit in, and he just couldn't learn, and he just couldn't do what he needed to do. And he was very unhappy, and he let everybody know it. So he came to my class. We had our little rough spots. I listened to his story, and he had quite some interesting stories. He didn't like school. He didn't think he got a shot. He didn't think people loved him. And so we built those connections, and that student today, just this week, he built connections with another student. He's a second grader. And there was something going on at recess, and the other little boy couldn't get settled down. And this young man went over to him and told him to just breathe. It's going to be all right. You just need to breathe. Take it easy. So he breathed with him. Teacher friends, this is what it's about. Building these connections, helping these students get through their stories. I always like to do a little scenario with the little beverage can. You know, what would happen if I shook this up vigorously? It would explode. And if we expect our students to come to our classrooms with anger and violence, dad choking mom, police have been called, brothers grabbing the little brother and running out the door with them for their life, and we ask them to get out their books, their pencils, do the assignment. I mean you to do the assignment now. You have 10 minutes. What do you think is going to happen to that child? These are the children I do see, the ones that explode. So we have to be careful. We have to take our time, my friends, just to listen. And in closing, I'd like to share 2 stories. They touched me very deeply. Thank you so much for all your patience and hard work this year, and for loving my son, and for pouring good into his life. I love that. I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. Oh, I thought, oh, these 2 years of struggling with this child, it was all worth it. And from a student I had 15 years ago, this was one of the most difficult students I've ever worked with, a very violent student from a very violent home with a lot of disaster going on in his life. And we were his Superman. We were his heroes. And this is what he wrote me on the last day of school. And I keep this in front of me on my desk to remind me why I teach through those strong days and through those weak days. Thank you for making me a good kid. Ladies and gentlemen, teacher friends, know a child's story. Before we can teach a child, we must touch a child. Thank you.